Now let me connect the dots for you. What happened November the 7th, 2014? A report came out. President Obama wrote a secret letter to Iran. And this Fox News will give you some details on that before I connect the dots.
President Obama sent a then-secret letter to Iran's supreme leader calling for cooperation in the fight against the Islamic State militants. That's according to the reporting of the Wall Street Journal newspaper. Sources told the Journal that the president wrote to the Ayatollah Khamenei last month. They say he kept the letter secret to avoid creating tensions with our allies in the Middle East. The Journal reports the president stressed in the letter that any cooperation on ISIS depended on Iran reaching a deal on its controversial nuclear program via deadline later this month.
And so we have the president going to Iran trying to make a deal with Israel's enemy. And of course, when you do that, you find yourself in a really bad position for the curse of the Lord to drop on you. Because anybody that associates and comes together as a partner, if you will, in this case with Iran, we see that only bad things can come of it because you are making an alliance with yourself. You're making an alliance with an enemy of Israel. And so the curse has to fall. So, it is not a coincidence, I don't believe. When you read my book and you'll see the events that have been played out when a world leader comes against Israel or partners up with one of Israel's enemies, within a few hours, within a few days, or a few weeks, major incidences happen. Now, in 2014, we saw major polar expresses coming down, or polar vortexes coming down out of Canada, coming into the United States. And it affected millions and millions of people across many of the states in the United States, a freeze. And it happened on the very days that Barack Obama was coming against Israel. And so here we have it again. We see that the secret letter is going to Israel's enemy, Iran, and in the same day, look what happens. Watch this video.
Much of the United States is preparing for a big chill this morning. The remains of a super typhoon are about to hit some of the most remote parts of western Alaska. But that storm will affect nearly 250 million Americans in the weeks to come.
Former Typhoon Nuri is at its height, was one of the most powerful storms of the year. Scientists say it will disrupt the jet stream, driving a blast of cold air over most of the country. Dean Reynolds is in Chicago, where it will be below freezing by next week. Dean, good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Coast Guard is ready for Nuri, which is expected to strike the Aleutian Islands in western Alaska later today, but it's the repercussions of the storm that could trigger a polar vortex that could be felt all the way over here in Chicago and across much of the rest of the country in the coming days. When a storm this size, threatening to deliver high winds and 50-foot waves, blankets the Bering Sea, even those in weather-beaten Alaska take notice.
This storm is forecast to be the most severe storm that we've seen this season. We do have helicopter crews on standby.
But it's not the strong winds and choppy seas millions of Americans are worried about. It's the frigid air that may blanket the country as a result. Nuri is so powerful, it's rattling the jet stream, releasing a wave of bitter cold from the Midwest to the Northeast. The threat of a drastic temperature drop conjures painful memories of the polar vortex, when millions of Americans slid, scraped, and shivered their way through a seemingly endless winter.
The wind is disrespecting the jacket I got on right now. It's very cold out here.
Parts of Niagara Falls froze over, and Chicago alone received 80 inches of snow. Even though winter doesn't start for another 44 days, the sanitation department here in Chicago is preparing as if it's just around the corner. Now, have you ordered salt?
Oh, yes, we have.
How much?
We will be starting the season with 400,000 tons on the ground. We are certainly going to be ready for winter.
Now, the really cold air is expected to hit over the next few days, and states east of the Rockies could see temperatures 10 to 30 degrees below average for this time of the year. Charlie?
Dean, thanks.
So here we go again. The polar vortex is coming down on the United States, affecting what they say 250 million people. Now, anyone who are watching this video think that this is an isolated case and it has nothing to do with the curse of God. You need to go over to my book and read my book, The Curse of God, in that section of my book. And when you find out the number of times that the world leaders have come against Israel, or lining themselves up with the Israeli enemies, destruction hits. It's not a coincidence. It happened again. Get ready for this next polar vortex to drop down on 250 million Americans. Now also keep in mind that in Luke 21:25, Jesus said that there was going to be big waves. Let me show you the scripture here. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress, nations with perplexity, the sea and waves roaring. So what does that tell us? Well, obviously there's going to be huge waves that push the sea that cause massive problems for the nations. And of course, those nations that deal harshly with Israel are being affected a lot more than those that have been aligning themselves with Israel. So in this short clip here, I want to show you that Rob Marciano, he's going to be talking about the waves that are going to be generated from this storm, this massive storm, one of these record-breaking storms that are on the way to hit near the Alaska and Aleutian Islands and then come down, swing that polar vortex into America. Listen to the size of the waves that they're projecting to hit.
To a monster storm that will soon send an Arctic blast across the country with the coldest air of the season for most of us. ABC's Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Rob. This thing was huge to start with, and now it's transforming into a real beast. Let's take a look at what once was Typhoon Nuri, one of the strongest storms on the planet this year. It's going to transform into a North Pacific storm, the remnants of that, and then get even stronger. Could become one of the strongest storms on record here in the Bering Sea with rapid intensification. One thing's for sure, big time waves with this. On average 50 footers, we could see them up to 80, 90, or even 100 feet. The winds and the waves will subside.
80, 90, possibly 100-foot waves that are coming. And so there is no question that you cannot mess around with the nation of Israel thinking that God isn't going to intervene and fulfill his promise about blessing or cursing you, because America, especially in 2014, has been a byproduct of the curse falling on the nation who rejects the word of the Lord.